trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. After 20 people, according to the Red Cross, have arrived to the hospital that they've set up with gunshot wounds, have died from them. Is this administration aware of these? And I mean, what is being done to address this situation?
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front. John.
I mean, that's a good policy to have, make sure that you confirm information before you end up putting it out. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. I'm your host, Matt Tardio, and tonight, boy, oh boy, do we have a special treat for you, because number one, if you haven't heard yet, in case you've been sleeping under a rock, Ukraine ended up attacking the Kerch Bridge again for the third time now, and it's still standing, and we're going to go over why. But also, not only that, we have Trump's response to it. He came out with not so nice words for Ukraine. Now, let's go talk about Israel for a hot minute before we even bother getting into what ended up happening in Ukraine. And by the way, we've got a new battle damage assessment as well from the drone strike that took place over the weekend over inside of Russia. Ended up knocking out a ton of their freaking aircraft. Guess what? Yeah, they did end up taking out a couple key pieces of aircraft that people are saying didn't actually happen. Well, we've got the photographs to show you guys tonight. Yes. Well, all right. Now, we talked about Trump's policies over inside of Syria not that long ago, and I explained to you guys that Jelani is a terrorist and he can't be trusted. He was one of the, I don't want to call him a founding member of ISIS because that's not fair. He actually refused to join the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIL, the Levant, whatever you want to call it. Either way, he refused to fall underneath al-Baghdadi, but he has taken control of Syria. He is a specially designated terrorist here in the United States of America, and he leads a very large international terror organization known as HTS. Yeah, well, today they ended up attacking Israel with a couple of rockets. And Israel proper, they ended up falling just south over the Golan Heights. Israel ended up answering back. We're going to get into all that and a heck of a lot more tonight. Oh, you work for Nucor. That's awesome. Our steel is solid. Dude, I believe it, man. I was looking through that manual, and number one, you guys would not believe the amount of just mind-numbing research that went in to actually do all of that, to be able to get all of those proper calculations and everything for you today. Now, I am aware of what, before we even get going, because a lot of people are going to be upset over the video that I released, I am aware of what the Ukrainian SBU stated. I am also didn't sleep under a rock, and I'm very familiar with explosives and how those particular devices work. And if you're going to invest that much time, effort, and money into going after a bridge for a third time that they've attempted to take out, you're going to want to make sure that dang thing is done correct. It doesn't necessarily appear like it was truthfully done correct, not even remotely close to being correct, and we'll talk about why here in a little bit. Now, before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, Greta Thunberg, she's back in the house again. She's on the Freedom Flotilla, heading her butt over to Gaza, allegedly, and this is them again complaining about drones. Now, I want you to take a look at this gentleman's face right here. You might see it again in just a hot second. I want you to remember it. I want you to burn it in your eyeballs. Pay attention. Pay attention to this gentleman's face.
We are reporting here from the Madeleine. We are right now at 80 kilometers from Greek lands and 68 kilometers from Greek territorial waters. What happened is that we just spotted a drone, and we confirmed it is a drone, but we just lost visual with it. We could have either turned back or turned off the lights. We have our safety procedures here, and it demands us to go get all of our life jackets. We prepare to alert level at the maximum, especially if it's approaching us, and we sound the alarm for you. Now we count on all of you to share what's going on here, and to please let the world know that we are 80 kilometers from Greece, and we need your help.
Yeah, you need help?
Please send this distress signal to everyone. We need your support right now.
I remind everybody that this is the exact same group. I want to say it was like last month, ended up claiming that Israel ended up striking the freaking boat with a couple one-way suicide attack drones, ended up detonating on the deck. They released a depth cam footage of everything on fire. They managed to show the videos of everything on fire, ended up doing a post-blast analysis on that and determined it wasn't drones that ended up hitting it, and nor did they release footage of drones hitting their deck. So now they're over there doing it again, floating around pretending like they're going into Gaza. But the reason I ended up putting that up on the screen is I want you to remember that guy's face, right? Remember I told you, remember that guy's face? Don't forget that guy's face for a reason. What I'm about to put up on the screen is a funeral of Mr. Nasrallah. You guys remember him. He's the former dead leader, all right, of Hezbollah. He got killed in an airstrike last year over inside of Beirut. Guess who was at his funeral? Yep. Who's that guy? Who that be? Who that be? Who dat? Anybody? Who dat? Would that happen to be the same jackwagon that was on the boat? I mean, certainly looks like him. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying they have very striking similarities to each other. I got a feeling it's the same guy. So it's no wonder that he's over there spitting crap about Israel attacking his boats and, oh my God, the drones are coming after them. Look, man, at the end of the day, nobody cares about you. You're not a threat. And even if you tried to face Israel's freaking blockade of the sea, you're not going to win in your little freedom flotilla. So I have no idea what the heck you're even doing other than putting out propaganda and trying to bring stuff in, like, over to attention anyways. That's not Jackson Hinkle. Jackson Hinkle, I think, is still running around inside Lebanon, and he hasn't been freaking schwacked yet, unfortunately. Just wanted to finish showing that video in its entirety for full transparency, all 3 seconds of where his little face ended up sticking out. Now, I told you guys that, oh, what do we have here? Danny Golan. A few years ago, there was an undercover Swedish girl that got on camera that Hamas Europe funds that Freedom Peninsula. Hold on. A few years ago, there was an undercover Swedish girl that got on camera that Hamas Europe funds that Freedom Peninsula. Huh. Interesting. Sky God coming in, gifting out 2-0 Speak the Truth memberships. Greatly appreciate you, brother. Tom Bones says that was scripted. He was reading his lines. You could tell by him looking. Yeah, of course. The entire setup, dude, is completely and totally scripted. And that's why I ended up bringing up him at Nasrallah's funeral. Or, excuse me, the individual that appeared to be him over at Nasrallah's funeral, right? So, yeah, Defense Minister Katz, he's a little bit pissed off at Jelani. Just slightly pissed off. Why? Because he ended up, like, out of, I'm going to put it up here on the screen. I'll just, you know what? I'll just go ahead and do it anyways. Just go ahead and throw this up here on the screen. The rockets that ended up slamming over into the Golan Heights today ended up coming out of this region over here inside of southern Syria called Dara. 2 rockets, in fact, ended up getting launched out of Dara and slamming over into was reportedly the southern Golan Heights. I believe it was somewhere in this vicinity. And within the same 30 minutes, I kid you not, within the same 30 minutes, all the way from down here inside Lebanon, you ended up having the Houthis fire a dang-gum ballistic missile back over at Israel. So now Israel has incoming rockets from Syria, and they've got ballistic missiles being fired by the Houthis while they're on the home front over there inside Gaza, attacking the freaking Hamas fighters. Imagine that. Well, Defense Minister Katz, Israel, everybody says, you know what? We're going to end up holding these people accountable. You don't get to go around and do that crap. And so they did, in fact, answer back with artillery fire today. This is a fact. Here is the location of the projected impact sites of those 2 rockets that ended up taking place just south over in the Golan Heights. And I believe I have, yes, let me make sure here, the alarms going off of the rockets being fired out of there. I don't know who put swipe or no swiping in the comment section, but that like caused my brain to go like that. Like takes me back to when my kids were like tiny. So appreciate you throwing that in there. All right. So because they ended up doing that, that Israeli Defense Force ended up firing artillery back over inside of southern Syria just a short while ago. There's also rumors that there was airstrikes and gunfire, explosions and gunfire taking place over near Jelani's compound. So I don't know if that is Israel conducting airstrikes over outside of Jelani's presidential compound. By the way, he's not president. Just want to throw that out there. He's still a freaking terrorist. He just happened to like oust the old president and is acting as the de facto leader, to be perfectly clear. And this is why I titled this video what I did, Impact of Trump Policies on Ukraine and Israel. Because when we look at it, Trump went over and he ended up shaking hands with al-Jelani, and myself and everybody else stood back and warned that the man is a daggum terrorist and you cannot trust him. Israel can't trust him. The man is just quite simply not to be trusted. And yet today we end up having all of those rockets end up falling over there. Israel ended up intercepting that ballistic missile that ended up getting shot by the Houthis, which was kind of funny to me. Ooh, get up there. Get. Here's your ballistic missile that was shot by the Houthis being intercepted. Excuse me, I think I said ballistic missile shot by the Houthis. That was an interceptor shot by Israel to go intercept the ballistic missile shot by the Houthis all around the same time. Sounds good. It's on my TV, man. Yeah, no, if you're having issues, if my mic's cutting in and out, excuse me, I'll just do my best to talk into it. I ended up, it's not the noise gate. I ended up cutting it down just a little bit. It's where my face is positioned. Either way, Israel ended up coming out today saying that Hamas is losing control on the Gaza Strip. There's actually rumors right now, and I'll show you guys here in just a little bit, that Palestinians have uprisen and are now lynching Hamas fighters in the street. Can't make this crap up. Israel came out with this statement.
Good evening. Over the past week, the IDF has launched precise activities throughout the Gaza Strip as part of Operation Gideon's Chariots, targeting Hamas infrastructure both above and below ground, hidden deliberately in civilian areas. Efforts are constantly being made to avoid harm to Gazan civilians, while dozens of terrorists are being successfully eliminated. Our operations are fully aligned with our objectives, the return of our hostages, and the decisive defeat of Hamas. We are delivering major setbacks to Hamas and pushing operations, and the pressure we are applying, Hamas is losing its grip on the population in Gaza and its control over humanitarian aid. Over the past week, designated distribution centers were opened in southern Gaza to provide aid directly to the civilian population. Tens of thousands of food packages are being distributed daily by a US-based civilian company. This initiative is proving effective. Gazan residents are coming to the distribution centers to receive the aid. The civilian population of Gaza understands that Hamas is not taking care of them. On the contrary, Hamas is actively trying to prevent them from receiving the aid. Hamas has responded to this aid initiative with violence in attempts to sabotage the delivery of aid and even send gunmen to fire at civilians in the aid distribution centers. We operate nearby and do whatever is necessary to ensure that the aid does not fall into the hands of Hamas. In addition, dozens of humanitarian aid trucks have been entering daily through the Kerem Shalom crossing, but this aid is not being collected or distributed. Over 450 trucks are waiting in the area of the Kerem Shalom crossing, ready for collection and distribution. The aid is waiting. The residents of the Gaza Strip are waiting. The organization responsible for the distribution is not acting. According to initial findings, the IDF did not fire at civilians within the aid distribution centers. Any claims to the contrary are entirely false, harm our forces, and serve Hamas propaganda. Hamas is spreading false information, which is unfortunately being echoed by the international media without any verification. Earlier today, IDF forces carried out warning fire approximately half a kilometer from the aid distribution center, targeting a few individuals who were approaching in a way that posed a security threat. We are not preventing Gaza residents from accessing the aid distribution sites. The IDF is committed to uncovering the truth and will examine any incident that requires review. The humanitarian aid initiative will continue and will expand in the near future. We will continue to operate to achieve the war's objectives in Gaza. The hostages are always on our minds. Returning all the hostages to their families, the living and the deceased, including civilians and IDF soldiers, is a priority. We will not rest until the last hostage is home. We maintain high readiness across all fronts.
All right. We don't need to hear the last bit of propaganda that's going to end up coming out of there. Yes, we get it. You guys are going to go after it and you're going to crush Hamas, which you absolutely should do. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are having issues over at home, if the audio is cutting out for you, just go ahead and refresh your window and that ought to take care of it. So don't worry about it at all. All right. It will get picked back up. All right. So Now, again, reports are coming in from Gaza that they are lynching Palestinians in the street, but what's even more so is that they ended up releasing what it looks like this memo today from the State of Palestine Family and Clans of the Southern Governance of the Gaza Strip. What did that statement actually come out and say? Well, it basically said that they're done putting up with Hamas's crap. They said that they hold Hamas fully responsible for the devastation in Gaza. They demand an immediate end to Hamas's rule and call for a national Palestinian conference to form new leadership. They call to hold accountability to those who dragged Gaza into this disaster, and they appeal to Mahmoud Abbas to lead political transition and rebuild the process of unity and law. They reject all attempts to legitimize Hamas and say it is a force of destruction. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. Last week, when Steve Witkoff came out and he presented a new ceasefire negotiation in order to get more hostages out. So when you have that type of uprising that's taking place in Gaza and you end up pulling the military out of that region, what's going to end up happening is those people are going to get their heads cut off. And you have to capitalize on that momentum if you want to successfully out that insurgency that's taking place over inside the Gaza Strip. As long as you stay there and you actually show those people support, theoretically speaking, right, those people should feel supported and they should start rising up. Again, these are huge steps for Israel. I know I told you guys like 2 months ago when all of this was happening. Oh my goodness. I know I told you guys like 2 months ago when this was happening that the riots and the protests that were taking place over inside Gaza are real, and you have to pay attention to them because it's a big sign for them. MT coming in with $4.99. He says, echoing the other person, multi-stream to X, Kick, and Twitch. You share great info. You should be rewarded for it. Well, thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, doing my best to freaking multi-stream as best as humanly possible. Twitch, not a big fan of me streaming wartime content for one reason or another. Just kind of is what it is. Other than that, IDF is continuing to move and push over inside the Gaza Strip. Not a whole lot of info is coming out of there right now, but again, when it comes out, I'll get it to you. Now, what the heck is going on over inside of Ukraine? Because we have a lot of information that's coming out of there today, not just on the Kerch Bridge, but several other things. We have North Korean mortar systems that have officially made their way to the front line for Russia. This is how good things are going for them. North Korean mortar systems are now being used on the front line. And boy, oh boy, do those look freaking ripe. Those look good and toasty, don't they? Oh, good. The serial number. Can't really make it out. Isn't that a plus? Look at that. So this type of equipment is being found across the front line over in Ukraine, reportedly, which means the Russians kind of suck. And that's exactly what I was talking about. Now, I said that I had an update for you as far as the aircraft go that were destroyed over this weekend in the drone attack across freaking Russia. All right. And it's actually pretty significant as we go about doing it. The A-50 AEW, right, ended up getting destroyed. And what I'm hearing now is that there was two that ended up coming out of that. I saw a lot of reports online of people trying to deny it, saying that it wasn't going, like it didn't happen, that Ukraine's full of it, that none of the freaking aircraft ended up being destroyed. It turns out that's not necessarily true. And this is a very key, system for Russia to have. Now, if it is true, I heard that they're down to one, maybe two of these suckers left over there, if any at all. And so it just kind of depends on what they have that's operational and everything else. Trump admin, again, like I said, catching a lot of flack from the freaking press today. Give this one a listen. Hey, listen.
On Ukraine, it's been a couple of days since Ukraine made that audacious drone strike on Russian airfields. The president hasn't said a word about it, and usually he's not shy about making his thoughts known on the war. Or, it's not bad on the war or any other subject. What have you heard from him on this audacious drone strike? Is he surprised? He said that Zelensky didn't have the cards when they met in the Oval Office a few months back. Does Zelensky possibly have some cards that the president hadn't known about?
Look, the president's thinking on the Russia-Ukraine war as it stands, I spoke to him about it just this morning, is he remains positive at the progress that we've seen. Again, he urged both leaders to sit down and talk directly with one another, and they did that. Russia handed over a memorandum of peace, or a peace plan, or a suggestion of one, I understand, to the Ukrainian side. They also agreed upon the exchange of prisoners or hostages from each other's countries. So he remains positive about the progress that we're seeing, but he also is a realist, and he realizes these are two countries that are at war and have been for a long time because of his predecessor's weakness and incompetence. So he's working hard to solve this conflict, and that's where his mind is right now on it. Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh boy, so he's working hard to solve the conflict. And that, again, when I warned you guys, now this is coming from somebody that voted for Trump, I do believe I warned you guys that Trump just doesn't understand the conflict over inside of Ukraine. I believe he's got a decent handle in the Middle East, still kind of not quite sure what the hell he was doing with Jelani, but he's at least got a decent understanding of what's taking place over inside the Middle East. But when it comes to Ukraine, he's got no flipping clue. And honestly, a lot of Americans don't either. I was actually in a space over on X last night talking with Gary Cardone, and the guy was very, very upset that I stood and I said, listen, you're not going to get a ceasefire deal. And this is something that Trump does not understand, regardless of how much he wants to push on it. The terrain that Russia currently occupies, they have voted into their sovereign territory. So for Russia to give up that terrain inside of Ukraine quite literally goes against the Constitution. Like, they're just not going to be doing it. Same thing goes for Ukraine. Zelensky doesn't have the authority to actually give up the terrain that Russia currently occupies. Zelensky can't do that. So that kind of leaves you to stalemate. Plus, understanding history, and you go back over time. And, this was a conversation I ended up having with Gary. I was like, listen, man, you might not care in America about the history of this place over the last 30 years, but the people over there do. And understanding that history is very key to knowing whether or not you're going to end up getting a ceasefire deal. We might not like it, but we have to understand it. You have to understand the mentality of the enemies of the United States of America and our allies. Because if we don't, then we're just going to be doomed to repeat failure. Same thing with the Palestinians over in Gaza and Hamas and all the radical Islamic extremists, right? If you don't understand that they're fighting a religious war, right, and that there's the only one thing you can do to stop them, which is to canoe their foreheads, then it's just going to continue on. Same thing goes for Ukraine and Russia. If you don't understand the Russian POV on this, and you don't understand the Ukrainian point of view on this, then you are never going to be able to push a proper ceasefire deal or proper negotiations in order to make this thing actually come to an end. And I don't think the administration has a full freaking handle on it yet. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's pop up the freaking Kerch Bridge. This video ended up getting dropped by the SBU. Now, reportedly, they ended up hacking into a CCTV camera off the Kerch Bridge and showing this detonation. Matt Borgeson says, question, what retaliatory measures can we suspect to occur on Russian side within 1 to 2 weeks? Are blistering agents and nuclear alternatives options? Matt, yes, they could be options. They absolutely could be options. I don't think that we need to expect nuclear response out of them. I could see blistering or choking agents, all right, so chemical warfare or something like that coming out, maybe in a couple isolated locations. There has been reports of that actually taking place, but not so much. What I actually ended up hearing was that they were going to start launching their dang ballistic missiles again, and that they were going to be targeting Ukrainian infrastructure, essentially trying to black out the entire country. They said that it can be accomplished with just a couple ballistic missiles. They'll go after a couple key locations, such as power plants, and substations and all that crap, and just try to shut everything down. And there was, in fact, a report of an explosion going on at a substation somewhere over in Ukraine today. I lost it. I couldn't find it again. And the entire area kind of blacking out as it went. Incog Faraday, brother, I forgot to give you a shout out for gifting out those 5 memberships. Greatly appreciate you, man. But yeah, Matt, that's a great question. Honestly, we'll see what happens. Okay, there is reports of, before we get into this, there is reports of Russian forces mobilizing to go and push a little bit deeper or harder on Ukraine. There's also reports of their freaking ballistic missiles being activated and then moving them around the country to go set them up. I think the most likely course of action is going to be for Russia to launch those ballistic missiles and to actually target that infrastructure, just like we talked about, going after the electrical grid. They successfully go over and shut that down. It would have a massive impact on Ukraine. We'll see if they can actually do it. I don't know. Anyways, here's the CCTV footage. I do think it is possible, not probable, but possible, that Russia could open up chemical weapons. I think it's possible. Maybe not probable, but definitely possible. All right, this is the video that the SBU ended up releasing. There you go. There's your detonation. It's a big boom. Big boom going off over there. Big boom. Okay, so good on the SBU for releasing that video. Now, they ended up saying that 1,100 kilograms ended up going off of it. Their official statement, let me go ahead and read this off to you, was the operation had lasted several months. The agents placed explosives on the supports of this illegal structure. And today, without any civilian casualties at 4:40 a.m., the first explosive device was detonated. I'll say that again. At 4:44 a.m., the first explosive device was detonated. The underwater support columns were severely damaged at seabed level. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent made this possible. In fact, the bridge is now in an emergency condition. The head of the SBU, Lieutenant General Maliuk, personally oversaw the operation and coordinated its planning. And then he gives his like political statement that ends up going into that. Now, do I think that that's actually what happened here? No, I don't. And I'm going to go over some of that stuff. I know a lot of you guys likely ended up watching the video about the Kerch Bridge, how it ended up getting like destroyed, and the drone that I believe ended up getting used to go in there and target the sucker. Why do I say that? If you are going to be planning for several months an operation on the Kerch Bridge, right? For several months, you're planning an operation. That means you know, generally speaking, the size of the target that you're going after. And all of this is going to make sense as I get into this a little bit. You know the size of the target that you're going after. You know the amount of explosives that you're going to need in order to do it. And whenever you're planning out a military operation, you only get one shot to get it right, because you can't repeat the same process twice, because your enemy is going to learn from it. Ukraine does want to knock out the Kerch Bridge. This is the third time they've tried. And it wouldn't be bad for them to do it, right? But if they were going to do it and they were going to put that much effort for months, then they would have had the proper amount of explosives placed next to those support columns that we're going to be talking about here in a second. Matt says, why does it take an attack on Russia infrastructure for them to target key areas in Ukraine? Could they have just done this anyways? Yeah, they could have done it anyways. You're absolutely correct. But the problem is that you are now going after vast majority civilian targets and things of that nature, right? Well, maybe not civilian target. The infrastructure itself could be considered military, depending on what the power supply is, so on and so forth, right? But what you're actually talking about is shutting off power to millions upon millions upon millions of people, right? And that within itself can constitute a war crime, especially in the extreme heat, in the extreme cold, and all sorts of other stuff. Plus, you're going to be killing people along the way. You're talking about shutting off medical devices, power, like supply, all sorts of things to like key critical infrastructure that's needed. So if that's actually what Russia does come out and do, yeah, they'll probably get slapped with more war crimes. Putin will probably be found a war criminal again. It's just kind of the way it goes. Don't know how else to really break that down. Now, this drone, all right, is the one that has been rumored to have been used, all right, in order to go off the bridge. Remember how they said a first explosion went off at 4:44. What is being said is that those explosive devices that they allegedly placed underwater went off, followed by one of these suckers swimming into it and detonating underneath. This sucker, again, has a 1,100 kilogram payload on it. D-Rock comes in with 2. He says, how does Russia fall into the red-green alliance? Huh? Excuse me. Let me, I don't know why I'm brain farting on this one real quick. Let me double check my brain, D-Rock. I didn't expect that question out of you, but it'll come back out. Give me just 1 second. All right. So this is allegedly the drone that they ended up using on that over there. All right. This sucker, again, 1,100 kilograms, is supposed to be about 6 meters long. It's a lot of boom boom that ends up going in there. Now, to understand why I do not believe that this ended up being a well-placed explosive device, all right, as the SBU ends up stating, it has to do with this, all right? Let's look at this bridge for a second. This is the Kerch Bridge. This is kind of what it looks like. I know a lot of you guys have seen this image floating around and see where this is going on, all right? And what ends up happening here, get up back over in here. What ends up happening here is you have this right here. You have the concrete cap, okay, that ends up sticking out above the water. I ended up measuring all of this out today on just one of these smaller support beams or one of these smaller concrete caps, and you're looking at about 10 meters, all right, in width versus length, okay? So about 10 meters in width over here on this side. To breach that, I did the explosive calculation earlier on the video, ended up putting it up on the screen. It's like 19,000 pounds, all right, worth of TNT in order to take out a concrete cap. It's a little bit smaller when we start talking about some of these like tubular supports that actually go up underneath those concrete caps. Over on any one of these support beams, okay, going down underneath it, you're looking at about anywhere between, I think it's 5 to 8, all right, of these little like metal support beams that you guys see. They're like driving down into the water. Those are a much easier target. But the problem is they're about 2 meters in diameter, all right? So about 6 feet across, 2 meters in diameter, 6 feet from one side to the other. And if you really want to know what the formula is, go look up pi and keep going, and you can get the whole circumference out of it. You could break the whole dang thing down. I really don't care. But about 2 meters across, so 6 feet across, just for one of those pipes. And they're about 1 inch thick. That is a very long breaching radius in order to get those explosive charges to go off. When you actually do the calculations and you put it out properly for underwater, as Ukraine said that they ended up placing charges underwater for these support beams that are down there at the bottom, it ends up coming out to like 350 pounds for a bulk charge. Why do I say a bulk charge? Because I don't think they have a drone sophisticated enough to swim underneath the water and wrap an explosive device all the way around and properly secure it and fit it. Here's the other issue that ends up going in with it, the way that Ukraine describes it. You have to picture that this is like moving water, all right? And there is current that is flowing down there all of the time. Not to mention there's going to be wildlife and shit swimming around the bottom of the ocean poking at it. So you need to make sure that those devices, even if they are placed down there from us, you can place C4 at the bottom of a river and let it sit for freaking years and it'll still detonate as long as everything's properly sealed. It's not a big deal, all right? So the explosives being underwater for a couple months, that's not the problem. The problem is having it properly anchored down there at the actual floor of the sea, right? So you got to have that sucker anchored down there. You got to have it properly affixed. And if it wasn't properly affixed to the support pillars, then you're not going to have good charge to target contact. That charge to target contact, particularly underwater, is very, very important because the amount of water, right, that is being like surrounding that explosive device at that depth has a lot of pressure, and that's going to dissipate the energy 10 times quicker than it would if it was just had a slight separation even on surface level. And that separation on surface level is still a big deal. But when you end up adding that water in there, all right, and cram all that water with all that water pressure, it takes away the effectiveness of the explosive. Now, if it's properly pressed up against the target, if you have that explosive device pressed up against the target, all right, it actually does something that's called tamping, where it actually helps to direct the blast going into your intended target, which is a good thing. Now, there is, if Ukraine did their job properly, which again, I know they know how to do because I literally taught Ukrainian SF guys how to freaking do this. So I know they know how to properly do this. That's why I'm like sitting back here and I'm telling you, no, this isn't how this shit actually goes down. All right. If Ukraine had done the proper reconnaissance, which it didn't take that long for me to figure out using open source information over here at the house, and I'd gone P for plenty to make sure I had enough, and I wanted to properly attack this bridge and take it out without looking like an idiot, I would make dang sure I had the proper amount of explosives placed next to those pillars, because if I couldn't deliver it, then there's no point detonating it, because all of a sudden I am giving up my way of attack, and then Russia is going to do their best to counter that some way. BBG coming in, gifting out 5 Speak the Truth memberships. Appreciate you, BBG. And John Wilson coming in, dropping another 10 on top of it. Theodore Shenik coming in at 19 months. Heck yeah, man. Danny Goland, are those support pillars magnetic? To the best of my knowledge, yes, they are. And so that is an option. All right. Now, the size of magnet that you're going to need in order to make that happen with, again, it takes about 350 pounds bulk conventional charge, because that's what you have to look at. Bulk conventional charge. All right. Basically just a big freaking charge. 350 pounds worth. And we can sit here and I could draw out the dimensions for you using, I don't know, we can use C4 if you want. I can tell you how much 350 pounds of C4 would look with the appropriate thickness and everything else being affixed to that pillar. But the issue is, what you end up coming to is all of that explosive, depending on how it goes, even if you put it in like a perfect circle to where it goes over and it can attach, I mean, it's still, it's hard, right? Like you're fishing pretty dang hard. And the size of the magnet that would take in order to secure that sucker to the metal pole is going to be really thick. And then all of a sudden you're losing charge to target contact, which is one of those very key important things that you have to have, especially underwater when you're looking at targeting those things. So yes, there is magnetics. You can use magnets. Most of these things are actually built by hand. Nobody's out there making a freaking explosive device to go and take out metal support beams on a bridge. All right. What ends up happening is you end up using conventional explosives, and you take them, you do the measurements, you do all of that work, and you combine it together and you go and put it out. All right. There is certain, how do I want to say this? There is certain companies that do make certain things to go over and attack targets such as these, okay? Like when you see like major demolitions and stuff like that. There is some advanced stuff that's actually out there that you can use, but that's not how it's really going to work. Lots of love for Matt's flowing tonight. I don't even know what you're talking about down there. So yeah, TM Bailey, you weirded me out, man. I got no idea what you're talking about down there. Putin really thought he would have Finland by now. Yeah, he did. All right, but let's get back into this. Let's get back to the topic at hand. And let me explain something that actually goes on here. And this is, again, why I ended up stating in the video that I think that drone was actually accurate. Because when I take this diagram and I put it up on the screen, properly explains it. Now, I spent a lot of time on this diagram and I feel really, really good about it. So I expect to see a lot of 100% and freaking hand claps for putting this sucker together today. Okay. Because that little waterborne drone that I ended up showing you guys earlier is rumored to be what was sent in second following that like initial blast that ended up going off. Alleged, right? Because we had a daylight one, all right, daylight going off. I'll have to go check like the sunrise and sundown times over inside Ukraine to make sure that at 4:40 a.m. that freaking camera would have been nice and brightly lit the way it was showing. Ukraine has underwater explosive experts. Correct. And if they have underwater explosives experts, why the heck aren't those pillars knocked out? Come on, guys. I thought I trained you to be critical thinkers. I thought we sat here and talked about this for a long time. You're supposed to be critical thinkers. 10-minute ducking ad. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know. I love your diagrams. Yeah, Chris. Well, I'm working on it. All right. So this diagram is one that I actually spent a lot of time to put together today. Even though it doesn't look like it, it's actually scaled, which is the big pain in the butt. You want Matt to scale something on a computer, you are dreaming, right? But I ended up figuring it out today. So here we end up having each of these pillars. Each of these represents a pillar. Now, on average, right, underneath that bridge, properly supported, they're supposed to be about 6 meters apart from center to center in between these little support pillars. And remember, they're hollow, 1-inch thick walls, 2 meters in diameter, so about 6 foot from end to end per, right? So they're separated by about 6 meters each as they end up going down. Now, that explosive drone that they ended up using, again, is only supposed to be about 1,100 kilograms, and it within itself is 6 meters long, estimated to be about 1 meter thick and carry about 1,100 kilograms of explosives. The issue is that you cannot get that sucker to take out all 6 of those pillars. Think about it, 6 foot, man. I'm 6 foot tall, for crying out loud. Like that is a hell of a breach underwater to make that happen, right? Like that is a massive breach underwater to move that much stuff, to break that much metal in order to shear it off. Not to mention, you don't just want them all stacked on the seafloor, because if you end up having all of your explosive charges laid on the seafloor and you blast it, there's a chance that the weight of that bridge just causes it to go cook and go down and set. So you're not going to get it. So it's actually the way that you end up doing it, which is you have all of your charges angled and canted like this, right? So that when they go off at the bottom, the middle, and the top, that you end up creating the shearing effect, which allows that to slide out from underneath, creates a room for that bridge to go down. Kind of like falling a tree, right? Like timber, same principle. So there's different ways to go about doing it. Yeah, nobody even pants checked me tonight and I ended up doing it anyways. Matt Borson says, the false flags they keep pushing about attacks left Russia as sitting ducks, unsure what to protect. You know, I don't know if that's really it, or if it's just, to me, when I look at this and the fact that that bridge, if they had actually gone in and placed charges the way they said they did, that section of the bridge shouldn't be there. Let's be perfectly honest here. Even if they send in divers with charges and all that crap, that section of the bridge should be taken out. Period. Now, here's the issue. For each of these columns, again, for each of these, you're looking at about 350-pound equivalent worth of TNT would need to be deployed per column. One doesn't have the same, like this breaching radius that you're going to need to take out this column, you'd have to have a charge here. So 350, 350, 350, 350, 350, 350 per. And this is why I'm saying, if Ukraine actually did this correctly, and they actually placed the charges, and they actually had them down, you're talking about what? 6 times 3, 18,000, 20 something. You might as well have just taken out the frickin' concrete cap. It's a buttload of explosives that you need in order to make this happen, right? Either way, it's still going to be drastically less, but if they properly placed them, it would have been a thing. However, if you end up sending this in there, you could actually do exactly what ended up happening today, what the SBU ended up putting out, all right, that you end up having severe damage to the bottom of it because all of that water pushing out, because when that explosive device goes off, it's going to push out equally in all directions, right? So when it pushes it out, it's going to end up damaging all those other structures on the bridge. Dehires, these are difficult missions and they have to be planned very carefully, so they may take time between, not to mention throwing Russia off. Look, you can make excuses for it all you want, but this is the SBU. This isn't a conventional infantry unit, right? These are guys that have been highly trained for years by assholes such as myself. They are more than capable of conducting this operation. If you think that Ukraine tells the truth 100% of the time, that the United States of America tells the truth 100% of the time, and that Russia tells the truth, or that Israel tells the truth, or that the Gazans tell the truth, whoever it is, you're out of your dang gourd, right? You have to look at the empirical data that you have and determine whether or not it passes muster. Because the truth is, if they would have placed charges next to these pillars, you wouldn't have had one that got destroyed and a couple that are damaged. You'd have had the bulk of them destroyed. You would have had this bridge properly collapsed. 2 inches of steel with reinforced concrete. It would be a pain in the butt to take out, is what I'm trying to tell you guys. And they would have done the proper calculations. So you were talking about a massive operation. Massive operation. And there's people over there making excuses and trying to say this or trying to say that. The reality is, just like how Russia had a black eye for having all of those drones pop off, if the SBU properly actually executed this target, It's kind of a black eye for him. And I'm not saying that. Like, I love Ukraine. I want Ukraine to win this war. All right. But to me, coming out and stating things like that and saying that, yes, this went exactly to plan and this is a black eye for Russia. No, it's not. It's embarrassing for Russia that the Ukrainians actually got explosive device, whether it be a drone or placed explosives. But if there were placed explosives, that looks really bad for the SBU because it says that they can't properly calculate freaking charges and properly place them in order to make the sucker go off. And if they had months in order to make it happen, why did they rush it when they knew that sucker would fail? So either they failed to anchor everything, they had one charge down there that randomly went off and everything else floated away. Look, it's a failure either way you put it. It's not a successful mission. The mission was not to harass the Russians. The mission was to take out the bridge. That's why you do this. You do this to take out the bridge, just like they did the last 2 times. It is hard. It's not easy. But if you're going to claim that you had people go in and place charges down at the base of the bridge, well, you better actually do it. And you better do it correct. Otherwise, people like me are going to call you out. And I know a lot of you guys don't like to hear that, but that's just what it is. Thank you, mate. Got it, Matt. Understood. Yeah, I hope I've made myself loud and clear. If you guys haven't watched that video yet, you need to go back and watch it because it's a very good video. A lot of information that ended up getting put in there. And I mean, I can't express that enough. Like, go check it out. Go take a look at it. There has been warnings that have been coming out across Crimea telling people that they need to evacuate. I'm trying to remember the guy's name in particular. He used to like govern the area. Either way, he came out and said, look, you guys need to get the hell out of there because we're going to cut the bridge off. You're going to cut the power off. Russia's going to turn you into soldiers and you need to go. That information did end up coming out. And then lastly, before I end up leaving you guys today, I have one video that I absolutely want to show you. And I, believe it or not, am extremely smoked right now. I definitely need a break. I've been going strong all day. I know it might not seem much. You got a 10-minute freaking video that got put out earlier, and now you got this. But I want to show you guys this video. It's got a little bit of cussing in it. It's going to end up demonetizing this video, and that's okay. You know, I could deal with that today. We'll see what ends up happening. But I think it's kind of important. What you're looking at here in just a second is going to be the inside of a taxi cab over inside of Egypt. Cody Gowring coming in, member for 15 months.
What?
Good, beautiful woman.
Fuck you!
No, don't understand. No touch.
No touch, please.
No touch, please.
What?
Beautiful.
What the fuck is this guy? Why? What happened? Why you see my leg?
Say good woman.
Okay, go drive.
Beautiful woman.
Please drive.
Drive, yes.
Yeah, please drive.
Yes, drive. بقول لك ايه رايك نروح البيت عندي my house.
我
我告诉你，你觉得去我家怎么样？
No, never. Don't think like this. Never. I cannot.
Wait, again.
我可以带我男朋友去你家吗？
No, أنا هو صديق ليه يور انت حلوة.
Oh my God. You guys get the idea. Look, just like, hey, I tell people all the time, if you want to solve a lot of the issues here in the United States, stop sleeping with women with blue hair and round glasses. Men. Also, if you're a woman, don't travel to Egypt by yourself. Don't travel to the Middle East by yourself. Don't go to Malaysia. Of all places, please don't go there. All right, I'm going to open up the Discord. We got Nate Vance in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to jump up over into the Discord section. I'm going to pull up Nate. Nate and I are going to have a discussion about what ended up taking place over inside of Ukraine. He's got, over at the Kerch Bridge. He ends up having like a little bit of a different take on it. I am looking for him right now, so I'm going to pull that up. All right, I got him here. Let me get this going and see if I can figure out how to make this happen. Let me get him up. Ignore Nate. Where are you, man? Come on. Get up in here. Nate Vance. Calling. I'm ready. I'm calling you, Nate. Uh-oh. Come on, buddy. I believe in you. Nate, if this doesn't work, I'm going to go ahead and bring you up on Signal. Yep. All right, Nate, I'm going to go ahead and bring you up on Signal because we're having issues over there tonight. Not a big deal. Give me 1 sec here while I end up pulling you up that way. All right, Nate, get ready, sir. I'm calling you. Nate, you SOB. I just tried calling you over on Signal. You can also try dialing me on Signal, Nate. I will answer if you get it. There he is, coming in hot. Got him. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Nate Vance is in the house. Nate, how you doing tonight, friend?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay,
For
cool.
some reason, it's not showing you on the screen. That's really frustrating. I don't know why. For some reason, does Signal have a thing where it just hides? Does not want to show you. It doesn't want to show you on the screen when I have you on Signal. That's weird.
That's all right. We can just do voice if that's
okay. Yeah, send it. So, what do you think happened over there?
Well, there's one thing I heard today that didn't get really reported on that widely, but the Russians claim to have caught somebody who was building a very large explosive device in Crimea.
I saw that.
So yeah, if the goal literally was to hang on, let me do this. I'm getting YouTube and this audio. Give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, so if the goal was to instantly, totally destroy the bridge immediately, yeah, it's a failure, right? There's just no two ways around that. If the goal, was to create like surface cracks and you know what I mean, and kind of damage the concrete, then yeah, maybe maybe it was a success, right? The thing is if, right? Like there's a lot of ifs that I don't know. So I'm not willing to call it like incompetence, right? Like, so if that guy in Crimea that got caught with that large explosive device was part of this, let's say they set up the explosives, like they have to make multiple trips with divers, which is risky, right?
Sure.
Maybe the first batch of explosives, you give yourself a time window, you set a timer on, each, on the batch, and you say, okay, if we don't get all of it in there, at least some of it will detonate before they find everything.
Okay.
But why? So if you're compromised, that could have happened. But if that happens, but you also have
a compromise plan, right? So if it ends up happening, especially if they haven't determined that the bridge is under attack or anything like that, you definitely don't hit go. You like wait it out and you figure out how to get the next one in there, because once that shot's off, that's all you get.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know how many guys they had like in Crimea, where they were, if it was divers, where they were sending the divers from, what equipment they were using. I know that when the USS Cole got hit, and we were protecting it, one of the like measures that the Navy did for the divers is they would just send an active ping with like a sonar ping, and anybody that was in the water, it would kill them. Like I didn't know that about but it would blast their eardrums out and stuff.
Wild.
Who knows? Yeah, and so who knows, right? Who knows what Russia's got security wise? Who knows? There's just a lot of unknowns. And then when you add that to somebody said, what am I smoking?
Somebody also said they wish you'd read them bedtime stories. Just throwing that out there too.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's a mix, but
okay.
So, yeah, like, and then I've heard some people saying, sending divers is safer. And I'm like, well, you know what I mean? It's less likely of being detected. And I'm like, yeah, but a drone is like a one-shot deal. If you send an underwater drone in there, it's a one-time thing.
Here's
if you send
the thing,
divers, you spend a lot more time going back and forth.
350 pounds TNT equivalent per pillar, right underneath, and median, you're looking at about 6 pillars total that they'd have to affix those charges to, right? And if you're going to do it correct, again, if this is the pillar as it goes up, and you have multiple of them, on one pillar, one row of pillars, I want them here. On the next row of pillars, I want them here. On the next row of pillars, I want them here. So when it detonates, the whole bridge ends up, that slides out from underneath it. If you just place all the charges down at the bottom and they go off, you run the risk of the weight of the bridge just going and falling right back down and not technically collapsing, right? And still being usable. And so all of this is stuff that they know, right? Like this isn't something that like, this is regular engineering 101. Like I know they know this, right? So that's question number one. If they ended up placing charges next to the bridge like the SBU claimed, why didn't the bridge collapse?
Yeah, well, like me and you talked earlier about the total amount. I think it was like what 14 something thousand pounds of Comp B would be what would be required to take out.
So it's 19,000 pounds. Yeah, so 14,000 pounds of Comp B to take out the concrete cap on top of it. And then you're talking about 350 pounds for one of those tubes. So you've got those tubes that end up going up, right? Yeah. There's like those steel tubes that end up going up, that end up going into the cap. And then the concrete cap is what the bridge kind of like ends up supporting itself on. And then the weight's distrode by those tubes that get drilled into the ground.
Yeah.
So those are the two targets that you could potentially take out. If it's the 30-foot concrete section, you're talking about 19,000 pounds worth of TNT. If it's one of those tubes, you're talking about 350 pounds equivalent TNT at that depth, if done correctly.
Right.
Because this is a 6-foot breaching radius, right? That you're looking at doing.
Yeah, but then if you look at, if you look at the number, I mean, it's just an incredible amount. I think the 14,000 pounds. I did the math on that, and it's 4 cubic meters of composition B. Yeah. Which is just an incredible mass of stuff for like a diver to have to move in there, or a team of divers, right? Like that's so many divers or so many trips and so much time exposed. It's incredibly hazardous. So I just, did if the goal was to immediately collapse the bridge, then yeah, it's a failure. But that's if, right? Like that's, I don't know, right? And part of that is me not being an engineer. There are other things that go. There's a pretty wide range between like causing damage that will progress and eventually be catastrophic or render the bridge unusable.
So you're talking about 400. Failure. So to give everybody an idea, if you were to take 350 pounds worth of TNT, if I did this correct, let me do the math real quick on it, because 350 pounds of TNT divided by 1.34 will give me 261 pounds worth of C4, right? Now, each one of those blocks of C4 has 20 cubic inches, right? And those are 1.25 each. So I got to divide that by 1.25, because that's going to give me the blocks of C4, and then multiply that by 20, which is going to be the cubic inches total, and divide that by 12, which is going to bring me down to 348 cubic feet of C4 for one pillar. Just to throw that out there for people. Just like, I don't think people understand when you talk about the actual size of these things and like how damn big they are. And when Ukraine's talking that they went and they placed these explosives down there in order to take it out, that's what we're talking about. It's a shit ton.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like with bridges in general. I mean, people have been like, I don't even really think the Kerch Bridge is that important anymore. There's a giant goddamn land bridge between Russia and Ukraine, that they can also use to get stuff into the conflict zone. But when you look at bridges, and we look at them from like satellite photos, and we're like, oh, it's just a little thin strip of concrete. And it's like, no, dude, these things are incredibly difficult to destroy, very difficult to destroy. And, they're very solid structures. They're meant to have trains and, heavy ass trucks drive over them. They're built to last. So like when people are like, oh, why don't we send an ATAC or a fucking HIMARS, an ATACMS to go destroy the Kerch Bridge? I'm like, that's like shooting an elephant with a BB gun. It's not going to you'd have to shoot hundreds of them at it to do any kind of significant damage.
And again, this goes into my issue with the entire way that it was laid out by the SBU. Like if you're going to go in, and again, it's doable, but you're talking about multiple trips back and forth just for one charge on one pillar. And even then, that charge needs to be arrayed properly and set up and stacked properly and primed properly to direct everything to go back into it. Then you got to tie everything in together and have that primed and ready to go. I mean, that's a massive place charge.
No, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. And that's what makes me think that they didn't do it with divers, because that's so much mass to move back and forth and be working in and out. Too many trips. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, there's different devices like underwater things that you can use in order to move that type of equipment, but that's a buttload.
Yeah, and then you got to think too, like, as much as you're going in and out with those people, basically, if you get one of those like submersible vehicles that like the SEALs use, so I can't remember what they call them, that's about the same size and shape of like a big drone. And if you can program the drone to hit the thing anyway, like why would you send some really valuable people with it? So, part of me thinks that maybe what happened is, I know they have nets around that thing. Maybe they sent some divers into where the nets were, poked a hole or something in the nets. I saw where they had a surface drone that was maybe a distraction for some of the things going on today. But there's multiple layers of defense around that bridge. I mean, the Russians don't want it to fall down. So who knows? If they did send drones, and only a portion of them got through, or one or two, maybe, it was like, hey, we're going to try this.
But
and it didn't work. Right?
Why I think it's more logical is like a couple of those drones going in there to make it happen. And like that video that Ukraine ended up releasing doesn't exactly show, 19,000 pounds or 14,000, whatever the hell it was that we came out going off underwater, not even remotely close. But I also don't know the depth of that charge of where it went off, because you got a lot of energy dispersion that's going out. But still, I mean, it's to me, the math is just not plausible. Like the way that they present it versus what actually took place. Jimmy Owens, please say hello to my brother John. Hello, brother John. How are you, sir? Hello. Any other thoughts on the drone strike from the weekend? Anything else like that? I know Trump came out with some pretty crap words towards Ukraine and the conflict. Basically that they're not trying to end it. He wants to end it. And again, I don't know how he hasn't figured this out by now, that there's not going to be a ceasefire.
Well,
just
listen,
Iran's going to enrich uranium.
Yeah, there was this guy that went on CNN and talked about that a few months ago. So you know what I mean? How you're not going to charm them into this. It's just not going to work. And then what's weird is, Lindsey Graham, Lady Graham, went ahead and said something about charming the Russians. And I'm like, I wonder where he got that. But anyway, it's the drone attack this weekend. Brilliant, right? Very. You can't, that is an absolute win.
Yeah.
It's
and I don't know how you go from that to this, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where I'm going with it is, I think if they were going to go after that, the plan may have been to do it, and then elements of the plan failed. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not.
I think you're right. I think elements of the plan failed, and that we only saw a partial that ended up going.
That's what I think.
And maybe they detonated it early because they ended up getting compromised. That to me makes sense. It makes sense to me that Ukraine discovered that one of their operatives ended up getting caught with explosive charges over in Crimea, and they were worried the whole thing was going to go, so they ended up blowing it anyways and sending that little swimmer to try to help it out.
Yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? I just don't know. But yeah, as far as the drone thing and the airplanes, you goddamn right. And first of all, anybody saying that that's illegal or that they didn't have a right to do that, you are out of your mind. It is. Those are absolutely legitimate targets. And honestly, the other thing is pretty much to replace those capabilities. Mm-hmm. The Russians had two divisions of strategic bombers. Some of them over near Kamchatka, and then the ones screwing around with Ukraine launching cruise missiles. Mm-hmm. The ones in Kamchatka were messing with us. They're messing with Alaska and our air bases and forcing us to have to go intercept them while they fly around and do reconnaissance flights near our territory and our airspace. Yeah. So if the Russians want to replace their capability with Ukraine, they have to pull their assets that are collecting on us away from us and go put them into the fight with Ukraine, and then put those at risk again for a secondary strike from Ukraine again. So really, it honestly makes us safer, right? So for Americans that are like, oh my God, I'm scared, just shut up.
Well,
you're fine.
Did you hear the discussion I had on X last night with Gary Cardone?
Not last night.
Talked to him about this? No. I mean, it was one of the similar things. Like, we have no business being over helping out Ukraine. We have no business dealing with Israel. The Muslim the Brotherhood and all of the radical jihadists aren't going to hurt us. Basically, we just need to focus here on America. I ended up telling him, sorry, brother, that's just not how it works. That might be how we see it here in America, that we can leave them alone and just let it be and ignore it and it'll go away. But that's just the sad truth. It's not going to happen that way.
Look, there's been really, really intelligent historians who have gone through and looked at history from the Civil War until present times. And pretty much every time America takes an isolationist stand, it is bad for the world. You know what I mean? Not just the United States, bad for everybody.
Very much so. Very much so, my friend. Very much so. All right, man. Well, what do you think tomorrow's going to bring? Do you think Russia is going to retaliate against Ukraine?
I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same. They'll send some, Kinzhals or, some cruise missiles at something. They might hit a power plant. They might not. But I think that's part of the calculus that Ukraine made when they launched that drone attack, was that you're going to attack us anyway. So we may as well hurt you.
Well, they took away a massive chunk of their ability to attack.
Yeah, yeah. So now, I mean, they're talking about that Reznik missile. And listen, I was a few blocks away from the first one they sent, and I didn't even finish my phone call. Right, I didn't even hang up my phone.
Really?
It's not that big a deal. It's just it's stupid.
Didn't Russia try to claim they didn't put explosives in that one, in those warheads, and that it was just the kinetic energy of it slamming into the ground?
That is what they did. They basically tried to reinvent our stupid rods from God idea with a
ballistic
nuclear missile where they just took the MIRVs and put like concrete or metal in them, and yeah, it's just a kinetic energy. They hit it like Mach 7 or something like that, and it hits. I mean, it's going to screw up a building if it hits it, but it's going to be isolated to that building. It's not Hollywood, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, you try to explain that to people, and it's the same thing. Like, hey, I know 1,100 kilograms packed into a tiny little thing is a lot of explosives, but it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. You know?
And about that bridge pillar, I have a photograph of that platform that those explosives went off.
Mm-hmm.
That shows some cranes and stuff next to it for scale.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's huge.
It's massive. Yeah, it's so big, right? Like, so it's going to take a ton of stuff to destroy it outright, right? It's just so much stuff. But who knows what happened in between the concept of the operation and that final execution of it? Right. Who knows? There's a bunch of possibilities.
You know what's funny is Sun Wukong says, "Were you a Bravo or a Charlie?" If you think Bravos can do the math that I just did on camera off the top of their head, you have another thing coming. Ha 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 ha. That's just not that. It's a joke. It's an inside joke. It's okay. It's okay. There's people out there that are laughing right now. I promise. They're just probably not you. So, all right, Nate. Dude, you got anything else for me, brother? I'm gonna take a load off for the night.
No, I don't. I'm good, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, brother, man. Have a good one.
All right, take care.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. Nate, always great to have you. Look forward to doing more in the future here. Ladies and gentlemen, peace, love.